Alexis was raised alongside her two younger sisters in a very happy and loving family. Alexis is described as being a very kind and generous person. She was very smart and very driven to meet the goals that she had set for herself. Alexis was a great student. She was part of the National Honor Society in high school, and she had a lot of friends. She played sports in high school. After graduating high school in 2012, Alexis attended the University of Pittsburgh, where she studied biology, nutrition, and psychology. And she had always really wanted to study medicine. She found science very interesting. Alexis worked very hard in school. She graduated in the top of her class, and then she decided to take a gap year. And for those of you who don't know what a gap year is, it's like when college-age students take a year off of school to travel or work. So, it was during this year, her gap year, when she decided to move to Odessa, Texas. Alexis got a job at Twin Peaks, a sports bar that is very similar to Hooters. This move to Texas was going great for Alexis. She made friends easily, and so moving to another state wasn't hard. She made friends. She was making really good money at Twin Peaks, and it was the perfect break she needed. So, after working so hard in high school and then college, she had this year to just kind of relax before applying to medical school. It was at Twin Peaks that Alexis met a man named Tom Sharkey, who was a regular there. Alexis had been in a serious relationship. She was actually engaged at one point, but they had called it off, and this was devastating to Alexis. She was in a very low place when she met Tom, and so at first he kind of seemed like a little bit of a rebound. Tom worked as a consultant in the oil field, and this job led to him traveling regularly. And Alexis, she really liked how well traveled he was, and there were just sparks right from the beginning. Now there was a bit of an age difference. Tom was in his mid-40s, and Alexis was in her early 20s, but it didn't seem to matter. Alexis, and she grew tired of the long shifts and being tied to one place. So she decided to quit her job and start working as a salesperson or like a company rep for Monat hair products. Alexis had been using these hair care products for a while, and so this was a pretty natural transition from like consumer to salesperson because she really believed in the product. Monat is an MLM, so you're always trying to get people to sign up under you. That's how you make the real money. Because of Alexis's natural ability to connect with people and her bubbly personality, she was a natural salesperson. She began recruiting people to work under her and quickly rose to the rank of executive director. And the executive directors made, on average, around $400,000 a year. Now, Alexis had an Instagram, and she had a pretty big following on Instagram. And she realized that selling Monat products would, she would be able to do it through Instagram. And it became a very lucrative way for her to sell her products to climb the MLM ranks. And then she began just full on working as an influencer, posting about her life, her travels. She just loved this luxurious lifestyle, and people loved to kind of experience her life with her through social media. We kind of saw this as well with the Chris Watts case, where his wife started working for an MLM, and they started to travel and share their lives on Instagram. But back to Alexis. She was constantly showing up on Instagram, posting photos and stories, and she had a following around this time of about 22,000 people. And in order to grow her Instagram, she just kind of always had to be constantly on that platform. Constant posts, constant stories, constant communication. While she was busy growing her business, she was still head over heels in love with Tom. They had gotten very serious, and by the summer of 2019, the two were engaged. And then they kind of just up and decided to move to Colorado. They loved Colorado. It's beautiful. They traveled all around. They really got to know the best places to eat, the best places to hike, and they loved their Alexis is 26 years old and Tom was 49. Once the couple settled in Houston, Alexis, she made some friends through this app called Bumble BFF. And she actually met a really good friend through this app. She would gain like a really loyal group of friends, and they would hang out and chat constantly. So, one of the women who she first met through the app was a woman named Tanya Ricardo. And Tanya had recently gotten divorced, so her life was changing and she was looking to meet some new friends. Tanya ended up inviting Alexis out to dinner with some of her other friends, and the group of women really liked Alexis right away. She was very sweet and friendly. And then Alexis met or introduced this group of women to some of her Monate friends, and they just became this very big, really close group of supportive friends. They were always chatting, like constantly in this group chat. And because Alexis always had her phone with her, like that's how she made her living, she was always quick to respond in these group chats, and often she was the first one to respond. So, she has this big group of friends, and like sometimes they would all hang out and bring their boyfriends and husbands, but most of the time it was just the girls, and her friends noticed that she rarely, if ever, spoke about Tom. And then March of 2020 happens, and the COVID-19 pandemic hits, and everyone is quarantining. People are not getting together. We're kind of losing the human connection for a few months there. It was really hard for Alexis. She joined TikTok and used it as another platform to sell Monate products and grow her brand and connect with people. Tom wasn't really seen on Alexis's TikTok, except for like one Halloween themed TikTok. In November of 2020, Alexis went to Mexico with her friends, and Tom didn't go with her. When she came back, she was getting ready for Thanksgiving, making plans. She talked to her mom on the phone to let her know that she wasn't planning on going home to Pennsylvania for Thanksgiving that year, but that she would for sure come for Christmas. Sadly, Alexis wouldn't live to see Christmas of 2020. Now, of course, her family was super bummed out. She had stopped visiting as much as she used to. She used to come home and visit every 3 months. But by 2020, her family hadn't seen her in over a year. But her mother told Insider that it was partially due to the travel restrictions that had been in place during the pandemic. So Thanksgiving 2020 Alexis texts her mom and wishes her a happy Thanksgiving. Our mom would later say this was a very normal text exchange, nothing out of the ordinary. What may have been a little bit out of the ordinary, though, was that Alexis didn't spend the holiday with her husband. Instead, she went over to Tanya's house and had Thanksgiving there. She stayed there until midnight, and then a friend of hers picked her up from Tanya's house, and they went to a bar, and they stayed at this bar until around 3 a.m. Alexis texted Tanya and told her that she was planning on coming back to her house to grab some stuff, but Tanya was asleep at this point. She didn't see the text from Alexis, and when she woke up the next morning, Alexis's car was gone, and so she figured she had come and picked it up and then gone home. So now we are on Black Friday, and Black Friday is a huge deal for stores, brands, and influencers. Money influencers were all starting their sales posts bright and early on Black Friday, but surprisingly, Alexis didn't post early that morning. In fact, she didn't post at all that entire day, which was incredibly out of character for her, and very alarming because she had been the one pushing, or maybe not pushing, but really encouraging everyone to start posting early on Black Friday to use the day to leverage sales. Around 5:30 p.m. that evening, a text came from Alexis's phone to her friend group chat asking if anyone wanted to hang out that night, just kind of seeing what everyone's plans were. But it was the day after Thanksgiving, and a lot of people already had plans. Some just wanted to hang out and have like a low-key night. So they all made plans for the next evening to have a girls' night, just like hang out and watch movies. This would be the last time that this group chat would ever receive a message from Alexis, and she still hadn't posted one time on social media that day, which is Black Friday. Later that night, one of Alexis's friends got a text from Tom. So it was actually one of her friend's boyfriends. And the boyfriend's name was John. And he gets this text from Tom that asks if he knows where Alexis is. John doesn't even respond to the text. He just calls Tom instead, and this is around 11 p.m. on Black Friday. And he's like, what is going on? Tom tells him that he and Alexis had gotten into a pretty big fight, and he had stormed out of the house. He said say that he and Alexis had not gotten into an argument, and he would change a lot of other details as well. Like, he would say Alexis was actually wearing running shoes when she stormed out of the house. Another change to his story was, initially he had said that Alexis had left her phone at home, but then later he would say she took it. So this guy was all over the place, and this of course raised some red flags. According to Tom, he tried to go out and track down Alexis. He drove around looking for her, and when he couldn't find her, he pulled into a gas station and he just sat there in his car for like 2 hours trying to clear his head. Then he started calling people and asking them if they had seen Alexis, or if they knew where she was. I guess up to this point, our friends weren't super alarmed. They didn't even really know that Alexis was missing. The next day, our friend group chat was blowing up with friends trying to plan their girls' night that they were going to have. Everyone was giving suggestions and communicating, except for Alexis. She didn't respond at all, and eventually her friends realized that she wasn't responding, and they became concerned, and they decided to look at her Instagram, knowing they would see what she was up to, because she was always updating her Instagram, and she was so active. But when they got on Instagram, they realized she hadn't posted anything since Thanksgiving 2 days earlier. It really wasn't until that evening, when everyone showed up for girls' night except for Alexis, that her friends really started to freak out. It wasn't like Alexis to just go radio silent and not show up for plans. So her friends called her mom, and her mom was actually already aware that Alexis was missing because Tom had called her. So everyone is worried sick. No one can get a hold of her. So her friends file a missing persons report with the police. And our friends left the police station, or left the police work up to the professionals, but they did what they knew how to do, and they began to harness the power of social media to let people know that Alexis was missing. Alexis's tight group of friends was working to get her name and her picture out there, hoping they would be able to find Alexis and bring her home safely. But while they were concentrating their efforts on social media, a Houston city worker named John Richardson came across the nude body of a woman on the side of a service road just miles from Alexis's home. Richardson thought it was a mannequin at his life, and he would later tell the media, quote, "That moment plays in my head. It's been playing back in my head every day," end quote. So Tom Sharkey was brought to the medical examiner's office to ID the body, and he confirmed that it belonged to his wife. He told ABC 13, quote, "Everybody was still looking for her, and I located her Sunday morning in the coroner's office. They couldn't ID my wife. They didn't know who she was. She was just there," end quote. So, Alexis is dead. There were no obvious signs of what her cause of death might be. No signs of a struggle, no visible wounds. It would take the medical examiner 2 months to determine a cause of death for Alexis. And in January of 2021, he announced that Alexis had died from manual strangulation. As soon as it was ruled homicide, police began to narrow in on Tom Sharkey as the killer. They spoke with friends who admitted that the marriage between Alexis and Tom had been falling apart, and that Alexis was scared of her husband. One friend said that, quote, "Alexis was petrified, and that she had really started to fear for her life," end quote. All signs pointed to the dissolution of the marriage, and they had even recently split their bank accounts into 2 after having been sharing one bank account. According to friends, Alexis wanted a divorce and had even had the papers drawn up. So all of this was super alarming to the police. Divorces often bring out the worst in people, and they believe Tom may have just snapped. And this theory became much more likely when they discovered there was another man in Alexis's life. While Alexis had been in Mexico in early November, just weeks before her death, she had met a man named Sebastian, and he was a DJ from Houston. Apparently, the 2 had really hit it off. Some of her friends were under the impression that Alexis had hooked up with Sebastian during this Mexico trip, while others didn't think that they had hooked up. However, all of the friends agreed that something was going on between them. Police would learn that Sebastian was the friend who had picked up Alexis on Thanksgiving night and taken her to a bar until 3 a.m. To this day, no one really knows if they were having this secret love affair, or if they were just hanging out as friends. Police began an investigation into Tom, into his whereabouts on the night and Alexis was this happy, carefree woman, but according to Tom, she was always anxious and stressed out, and he always had to spend time calming her down. Again, there are a lot of parallels to this statement to police and that in the Gabby Petito case. Electronic forensics played a big role in this case. Investigators looked into who had been in communication with Alexis in the days leading up to her murder, because they were trying to put together a timeline of her murder. Our friends believed that Tom had killed Alexis, and some of them came forward saying Tom was abusive and controlling and very manipulative when it came to Alexis. But months would go by, and Alexis's case seemed to be growing cold. At least, that's what it seemed like to the public. Behind the scenes, police were busy building a case against Tom Sharkey. In September of 2021, a press conference was held in which police announced that they had obtained an arrest warrant for Tom Sharkey for the murder of his wife, Alexis. During this press conference, they said that Tom had not been honest when it came to their investigation, and that he had a history of being evasive. See, Tom had left the state of Texas 2 weeks after Alexis was killed, and he left in the middle of negotiations with police who were trying to set up a time to meet him, interview him, and gather DNA samples from him. So, Tom moved to Georgia, and police tracked him down there, and they set a meeting once again to interview and collect DNA samples from him. But Tom never showed up, and police couldn't find him for a while. And when they finally did, they said that he came up with this very bizarre story later about why he had essentially disappeared. And then, a short time after that, he relocated to Florida. So he was basically running from the law at this point. In addition to Tom being uncooperative, police had learned that there was a history of domestic violence between Alexis and Tom Sharkey. Over time, police had gathered enough evidence to charge Tom with his wife's murder. Police said in a press conference, quote, "The investigation determined that Thomas Sharkey, her husband, is the only person who had the means, motive, and opportunity to have committed the murder," end quote. So, when this was announced, Tom was still in hiding. A U.S. Marshals task force was put together to find Tom and arrest him. On Wednesday, October 27th, U.S. Marshals learned that Tom was at his daughter's home in Fort Myers, Florida. So they went to her house and knocked on the door, and they were able to safely get his daughter and her boyfriend outside. Then authorities entered the home, where they found Tom Sharkey dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And this is where our story ends. Tom chose to end his life as police were gathered outside his daughter's home in order to not have to be arrested and pay the price for the murder of Alexis. This case has so many similarities to the Gabby Petito case, which I covered a few months ago. And it just makes me sick that these women are in these abusive relationships, but they hide it so well. And so the whole world is following them on social media, and everyone is completely unaware of what their real lives are like. If you are suffering from domestic abuse, there is hope. Help is available. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another video. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this case. I just quickly want to cite my sources for this video. I got information from a medium.com article by Theodora Maxovina titled "Who Killed Instagram Influencer Alexis Sharkey?" and Insider.com article titled "Houston Influencer Alexis Sharkey Found Dead and Naked on the Side of the Road. Here's How the Case Unfolded" by Rachel E. Greenspan and Palmer Hosick from December of 2020. And ABCnews.com article by Sophie Reardon titled "Man Wanted for Killing His Influencer Wife Found Dead in Florida, Officials Say." Thank you guys again for joining me. I am actually working on a Google Doc form where you can submit suggestions for cases. So many of you have submitted them in the comments and through Patreon and through email. And I think it will be easier to have just one place to refer to for those. So that will be coming probably in the next week.